Alice takes her daughter to the doctor, only to find that the attending physician is her ex-boyfriend Ethan, whom she broke up with 7 years ago. Ethan doesn't recognize her, let alone know that she has secretly given birth to his daughter. This unexpected reunion brings back painful memories for Alice, but fate continues to entangle the two, and Ethan's soul recognizes her before his reason. Late at night, in the VIP passage of St. Star Medical Center. Poppy, burning hot in my arms, breathing weakly. Get out of the way. My voice was hoarse, but my eyes were like knives, forcing back the security guards who tried to stop me. I couldn't let anything happen to my daughter. Just as I turned the corner towards the emergency room, I crashed into a solid chest. The smell of disinfectant, mixed with a familiar chill, filled my nostrils. I jerked my head up. It was him. Ethan. 7 years, this face was etched in my heart, tormenting me day and night. He was still as handsome as ever, dressed in an immaculate white lab coat, but the eyes behind his gold-rimmed glasses were colder and sharper than they had been 7 years ago. When he saw me, he was first shocked, his deep eyes narrowing sharply. Then, that shock turned into a chilling sarcasm. He parted his thin lips slightly, uttering venomous words, "Alice? 7 years have passed, and you've learned to find another way. What, your sugar daddies outside aren't enough for you, so you've come to the hospital to stage an accident?" Every word was like a rusty knife, stabbing me again into the wound that had been bleeding for 7 years. I was in so much pain I could barely stand, but I couldn't give up. I held my unconscious daughter tighter in my arms, forcing all my emotions back down, leaving only a cold hatred. I raised my chin, meeting his gaze with icy stares, each word like a knife. "Ethan, watch your mouth, or I won't hesitate to sew it shut. Now, immediately, save my daughter." He was stunned by the resolute determination and hatred in my eyes, momentarily forgetting to react. Our eyes met, but there was no spark of rekindled affection, only a battlefield ablaze with fury. This was the very first second of our reunion. This was the battlefield. Ethan's gaze finally fell on Poppy in my arms. Seeing the child's pale face, the mockery in his eyes faded, replaced by the professionalism and seriousness of a doctor. "Come with me." He turned and strode towards the emergency room. I followed closely behind, holding Poppy. After a series of intensive examinations, the preliminary diagnosis was in a rare acute attack of allergic asthma, accompanied by high fever and seizures. "He must be hospitalized immediately," Ethan said coldly, rapidly writing out medical orders. "Get the paperwork done first, and prepay 500,000. 500,000. This number felt like a mountain, pressing down on me and making it hard to breathe. Although I had saved some money from painting over the years, my working capital was far from that much. Just as I was pondering who to ask for help, a sweet, delicate voice rang out. "Ethan, are you done with your work?" A woman in a Chanel suit, with impeccable makeup, walked gracefully over and affectionately took Ethan's arm. It was her, Bailey. The daughter of the director of St. Star Hospital, and also Ethan's mother's favorite daughter-in-law back then. Her gaze swept over me from head to toe like a scanner, finally settling on my faded jeans, her eyes filled with undisguised disdain. She spoke sarcastically, "Ethan, not just anyone can stay in St. Star's VIP wards. Don't let some shady characters break the rules." Her words seemed to be directed at me, yet also like she was coaxing Ethan. After saying that, she directly instructed the head nurse next to her, "Go, print out a bill for this young lady for a prepayment of 500,000 yuan, and let her see it clearly." She was using money to humiliate me and force me to back down. The head nurse quickly brought the bill, and Bailey handed it to me like a queen, chin held high. I looked at her and suddenly laughed. 7 years have passed, and some people are still so uncouth. I didn't take the bill. I just stared at Bailey, making her uneasy. She finally raised her voice, "What are you looking at? If you don't have money, get out of here and stop getting in my way." I ignored her, turned and walked to the other end of the hospital corridor to make a phone call. Bailey, assuming I was raising money, wore a triumphant smile, arms crossed, patiently waiting to see me fail. A few minutes later, I hung up and returned. Bailey, assuming I hadn't borrowed any money, became even more smug. She pulled a check from her Hermes bag and threw it in front of me. Here, $100,000. Her posture was as arrogant as if she were giving alms to a beggar on the street. Consider it pity. Don't even think about using the child to cling to Ethan. I've seen plenty of women like you, your methods are despicable. I lowered my eyes, looking at the flimsy check. Then, I reached out and picked it up. Bailey's lips curled into an extremely contemptuous smile. The next second, right in front of her, I tore the check to shreds. The scraps fell from my fingers like snowflakes. 100,000? I chuckled softly, my voice carrying clearly throughout the corridor. Trying to appease a beggar? Or is this all you're worth? Bailey's face turned completely white in an instant, and her lips trembled with anger. You dare to tear up my check. Just then, Poppy, who had just finished nebulizing, was carried out by the nurse. Her little head peeked out from the nurse's arms, her big, dark eyes blinking as she looked at Ethan. In her childish voice, she asked, "Doctor, is that auntie jealous that my mom is prettier than her? I heard in the storybook that wicked stepmothers like to throw money at people." One sentence silenced the entire room instantly. The nurses were blushing from trying not to laugh. I saw a crack appear on Ethan's perpetually icy face for the first time. Bailey, utterly humiliated, ran crying to find help. I knew who she would call for help. Sure enough, in the afternoon, the door to the ward was violently pushed open. A wealthy woman dressed in a custom-made cheongsam and adorned with jewels walked in, followed by 2 bodyguards in black suits and sunglasses. It was Ethan's mother, Rose. 7 years have passed, and she still maintains that haughty, disdainful demeanor. Her sharp gaze swept over me, finally settling on my sleeping daughter on my hospital bed, her eyes filled with disgust and contempt. It was as if Poppy were something unclean. Without a word of preamble, she slammed a check and a document onto the table in front of me with a loud thud. 5 million. Her voice, as cold as her expression, brooked no argument. Sign this agreement, relinquish custody of this child, take the money, and disappear completely from my son's world. The words agreement were emphasized heavily. I looked down. It was an agreement stating voluntary relinquishment of custody and severance of all ties. Otherwise, she paused, a cruel smile curving her red lips, I have 100 ways to make sure you and your daughter can't stay in City A. As soon as she finished speaking, the 2 bodyguards behind her stepped forward simultaneously. Their tall figures cast huge shadows, enveloping my and Poppy's hospital beds. A silent threat is more oppressive than any words. From monetary humiliation to physical threats. From Bailey to Rose. Their methods are the same as 7 years ago, unoriginal, yet 100 times more vicious. My hand, hidden under the covers, clenched into a tight fist. Alice, you can't be afraid. Behind you is your daughter. I took a deep breath, suppressing my anger, and instead forced a calm smile onto my face. Under Rose's bewildered gaze, I slowly took out my phone and turned on the screen. A red recording timer was flashing on the screen. I shook the phone, then, right in front of her, pressed the dial button. Hello, 110? My voice wasn't loud, but it was clear and calm. In the VIP ward of St. Star Hospital, someone with bodyguards is threatening and intimidating the patient's family, and trying to force me to give up custody of my child with money. Rose's face changed drastically instantly, and panic appeared on her well-maintained face for the first time. You dare call the police? Why wouldn't I dare? I sneered. This is a society governed by law, Rose. Just as the tension in the ward was about to escalate, a piercing cell phone ring broke the standoff. It was the hospital director's phone. The dean glanced at the caller ID. It was an encrypted international call. Not daring to delay, he quickly stepped aside to answer. Hello. The next second, the dean's expression shifted from respect to shock, then from shock to fear, cold sweat instantly beading on his forehead. He kept bowing and nodding into the phone. Yes, 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 don't worry, I understand, I'll handle it right away. Definitely. Definitely. After hanging up, the hospital director practically tumbled to my bedside. His obese back bent at a 90-degree angle in an instant. Alice. I'm so sorry. It's my fault for not managing things properly, and I've caused you and your family so much trouble. He turned to Rose and Bailey, who were still in a daze, and snapped at them, "What are you two standing there for? Apologize to Alice right now." I clearly heard the dean use the respectful form of you when addressing the person on the other end of the phone. And the person on the other end commanded him in an unquestionable tone. Immediately deploy the highest level of security to ensure the absolute safety of our most important collaborating artist, Ms. Whale, and her family. All expenses will be charged to my account. Whale is my pen name. The person on the phone was my overseas agent and also one of the mysterious shareholders of St. Star Hospital. Rose and Bailey's expressions were as fascinating as a silent film. And all of this was witnessed by Ethan, who was standing outside the door. For the first time, the disdain he held for gold diggers began to waver dramatically. After that farce, my world became peaceful. With the hospital director personally overseeing things, not even a fly could get into my room, let alone Rose. Ethan, as my attending physician, made rounds every day, but we didn't exchange a single word about anything other than my medical condition. His gaze grew increasingly complex, filled with inquiry, doubt, and confusion, like an impenetrable net that suffocated me. To develop the most precise treatment plan for Poppy, the hospital conducted in-depth genetic sequencing on her. That afternoon, Ethan walked into the ward carrying a report. His face was unusually pale, and his knuckles were white from gripping the report so tightly. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, his voice hoarse. My heart tightened. "Has Poppy's condition worsened?" "No," he shook his head, his gaze fixed on me. "The report shows that Poppy's genetic sequence contains a rare marker associated with exceptionally high intelligence and artistic talent." My heart skipped a beat. He continued, each word like a hammer blow to my heart. "This genetic trait is extremely rare. As far as I know, the Pei family's genetic pool contains this marker." I suddenly looked up, meeting his unfathomable eyes. There, a storm was brewing. He remembered Poppy's intelligence and logical abilities, which were beyond his years. He remembered the focused look on my face when I was drawing. He remembered the confidence I had when I refused his mother, a confidence that wasn't typical of a down-on-her-luck woman. A crazy thought flashed through his mind, sending chills down his spine. He practically spat out those words through gritted teeth, not to me, but to his assistant behind him, "Investigate everything that happened after Alice left me 7 years ago. Everything. Especially, when did she get pregnant?" I knew he was starting to suspect something. Pandora's box was about to be opened by his own hands. Ethan's assistant was frighteningly efficient. Or rather, no one dared disobey Ethan's orders. The next day, I saw Ethan burst out of his office, his eyes bloodshot, like a wounded wild beast. He didn't come to see me. Instead, he drove straight back to the Pei family's old residence. I later learned that just minutes earlier, he had received an investigative report in his encrypted email account that could upend his entire world. The report contained a photograph that had been restored using high-resolution technology. The photo shows him and Bailey, naked, lying on a messy bed 7 years ago. This photo is the ironclad evidence that Rose threw at my face and forced me to leave. The next page of the report is an analysis report from a top-notch technical team. The photo was maliciously photoshopped, and the editing techniques were sophisticated, but the traces were exposed under pixel-level analysis. The email attachments included bank records showing Rose transferring $5 million to me back then, as well as a recording that had been recovered using technical means, in which she humiliated me downstairs in my dorm building. "What right do you, a poor girl like you, have to enter the Pei family? Ethan is just playing around with you. He really wants to marry a high-society heiress like Bailey. Take this money and get as far away as possible. Don't taint my son's path." The truth, like the sharpest knife, pierced through the defenses Ethan had built with indifference and resentment over the past 7 years. He had wronged me for 7 years. He had hurt the girl who once had his heart and soul for 7 years with the most vicious words. He didn't even know that while he was humiliating me with the word gold digger, I was carrying his child. Immense regret and pain overwhelmed him like a tsunami. Surveillance footage from St. Star Hospital shows that after rushing out of the office, he punched a hard wall in an empty stairwell. Blood instantly streamed down the back of his hand. The flames of a wife chasing after her death struggle were ignited by his own hand at this moment. What he owed me, he would begin to repay from this day forward. From that day on, Ethan changed. He was no longer the indifferent Ethan, but became an awkward and humble appeaser. He personally cooked a top-quality Buddha jumps-over-the-wall soup and delivered it to my hospital room in a thermos. I opened it, smelled it, and then, under his expectant gaze, went straight to the bathroom and poured the entire bucket into the toilet. The flushing sound rang out, and I turned back, giving him a fake smile. I'm afraid Ethan's stuff might be poisonous. His face turned deathly pale instantly, his lips moved, but he couldn't utter a single word. He tried to approach Poppy, who was drawing, but as soon as he reached out, Poppy, like a startled fawn, buried his face in a broad, warm embrace. The person who came was my manager, Kevin. He was wearing a well-tailored Armani suit today, and his blonde hair was styled meticulously. He looked many times more handsome than Ethan. Kevin affectionately picked up Poppy, gave her a loud kiss, and then looked at Ethan defiantly. "Ethan, are you done with your rounds? If not, please stay away from my artist and her family." My artist. His family. Every word felt like a declaration of ownership. Poppy, ever the master of the finishing touch, wrapped her arms around Kevin's neck and loudly proclaimed in her clear voice, "Mommy, I still prefer Uncle Kevin as my dad. He's richer and gentler than that icy-faced uncle." I saw Ethan standing there, his hands clenched into fists at his sides, veins bulging on the back of his hands. His handsome face was a mixture of jealousy, frustration, and the pain of helplessness. That feeling must have been awful. But what is this compared to the suffering I've endured over the past 7 years? I coldly turned my head away and continued revising my drawing, not even bothering to give him a second glance. "Ethan, your retribution has only just begun." The continuous shocks drove Bailey completely insane. She was ignored by Ethan, publicly humiliated by me, and now even her father, the dean, was furious with her for offending the mysterious shareholder. All her resentment was now focused on Poppy and me. A wicked thought took root in her mind: she's going to destroy me. She's going to destroy my daughter. She's going to create an irreversible medical malpractice incident so that Ethan will hate me for the rest of his life. Using her position and her father's connections, she easily evaded surveillance and infiltrated the hospital's central pharmacy. Poppy's next 4 infusion required an imported stabilizer. Bailey found the bottle of medicine, then took out another bottle from her pocket that looked exactly the same, with a counterfeit label, and switched it. She replaced it with a fake banned drug that would react violently with the main drug, causing severe anaphylactic shock and heart failure. The color and smell of this drug were almost indistinguishable from the genuine product. Its deadly toxicity only manifested after it was administered into the body. Once the infusion was complete, there was no saving her. After doing all this, she left the pharmacy as if nothing had happened, a sinister and smug smile on her face. She could already picture Poppy struggling in pain on her hospital bed while I collapsed on my knees, sobbing uncontrollably. She thought her plan was foolproof. She thought I was just an ordinary single mother who knew nothing about medicine. She didn't know that in the past 6 years, I had studied more medical texts on my own than she had read in her entire university studies, all for Poppy's sake. She also didn't know that as a top illustrator, my ability to distinguish colors had reached the pixel level. Her deadly scheme was doomed to fail from the start. The nurse pushed the treatment cart into the room, preparing to give Poppy in 4. As usual, I picked up the 4 bottle and examined it closely against the light. The nurse smiled and said, "Alice, you're so meticulous, checking every time." I smiled back, saying nothing. In that instant, my pupils constricted sharply. The color of the medicine was wrong. Although the difference was extremely subtle, a near negligible shade of gray, it wouldn't escape my notice. My heart sank instantly. Wait. I immediately stopped the nurse. What's wrong, Alice? There's something wrong with this medicine, it can't be used. My voice was frighteningly calm. The nurse was stunned. That's impossible, these were just dispensed from the central pharmacy. If I say there's a problem, then there's a problem. I didn't explain further and simply took the medicine bottle off the floor stand. Could you please call your head nurse and Ethan over here? I didn't make a fuss. Instead, I quietly put the medicine bottle away and immediately called Kevin, asking him to retrieve all the surveillance footage from the central pharmacy from last night until now as quickly as possible. Half an hour later, all the hospital's pediatric specialists were urgently summoned to the conference room for a consultation. Bailey was among them, looking completely innocent. She even turned the tables, accusing me of distrusting the hospital, being unreasonable, and delaying my child's treatment. She acted with such emotion, as if she were the one most concerned about Poppy's condition. Watching her clumsy performance, I could only laugh. Only after she finished speaking did I slowly walk onto the stage and plug a USB drive into the computer. Before we discuss my question, let's have the experts watch a video first. I pressed play. On the big screen, the entire process of Bailey sneaking into the pharmacy late at night and switching the medications was clearly shown. After the video finished playing, I showed Bailey an emergency test report from a third-party authoritative institution regarding the problematic drug. A counterfeit banned drug, capable of causing acute heart failure with a 99% mortality rate. The report's conclusion was like a resounding slap in Bailey's face. The conference room was deathly silent. Everyone stared at her in shock and anger. Bailey's face drained of color, and she slumped into her chair. Ethan stood up and walked step by step to her, his eyes cold enough to freeze anyone in place. He pronounced her death sentence word by word. Bailey, you are fired. The legal department of St. Star Group will formally prosecute you for intentional injury. Bailey's father, as the director of St. Star Hospital, was naturally unwilling to let his daughter be ruined like this. He used all his connections and even convened an emergency board meeting, attempting to suppress the matter under the pretext of protecting the hospital's reputation and demanding that it be handled internally. At the board meeting, the dean, in tears, attributed Bailey's actions to a moment of folly and pleaded with the directors to give him face. Several directors with business dealings with the Lin family echoed his sentiments. Just as the matter seemed about to be smoothed over, the meeting room door was suddenly pushed open. Ethan walked in. He wasn't wearing a white lab coat, but a well-tailored black suit, exuding a powerful aura befitting a leader, completely different from his usual self. He went straight to the head of the table and tossed a document onto it. Fellow directors, the discussion is going quite well? The dean's expression changed when he saw him. Ethan? This is the board meeting. What are you doing here, a doctor? Ethan sneered and looked around the room. I forgot to introduce myself. He picked up the document and showed it to everyone. It was a share certificate and a legal document confirming his status as the group's heir. Ethan, 30% shareholder of St. Star Medical Group, and first in line to the group's succession. Now, am I qualified to attend this meeting? The entire room fell silent. Everyone stared in disbelief, as if struck by lightning, at the young man they had always thought was just an ordinary, talented doctor. Who would have thought he was actually the hidden heir of the St. Star Group? The dean's face instantly turned a deep shade of liver. Ethan gave him no chance to breathe, and produced another document. My father, the chairman of the Holy Star Group, has personally authorized this. From this moment forward, I declare, first, Jack is dismissed from his position as dean, effective immediately. Secondly, Xingxing Group will terminate all business cooperation with the Lin family's businesses and will never hire them again. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried immense power, intimidating everyone present. He used absolute power and the most forceful approach to crush all conspiracies and networks of relationships. After finishing everything, he left the conference room and went straight to my hospital room. He stood before me, his eyes filled with deep affection and regret. "Alice, I failed to protect you before. From now on, Saint Star Hospital will always be your support. Even if the sky falls, I'll hold it up for you." I looked at him, my heart unmoved, and simply turned away coldly to continue peeling the apple in my hand. "Your power, your attempts to make amends, mean nothing to me anymore." Although Bailey's plot was thwarted, her actions still caused irreversible damage to Poppy's body. The continuous stress response, coupled with the pre-existing condition, led to the complete collapse of Poppy's immune system. That afternoon, the data on the monitor suddenly plummeted like a kite with a broken string. Poppy fell into a deep coma. Alarms blared throughout the entire floor. I watched helplessly as a group of doctors and nurses rushed into the ward and wheeled Poppy to the ICU, while I was blocked outside, unable to do anything. My world collapsed at that moment. I slumped onto the cold floor outside the ICU, feeling as if all the strength had been drained from my body. Hours later, the ICU doors opened. Ethan and a group of the country's top experts emerged, their faces grim. "The situation is critical," Ethan said, his voice hoarse and almost incoherent. "The child's immune system has completely failed, and conventional treatments are no longer effective. The only hope is to perform a bone marrow stem cell transplant within 22 hours to rebuild her immune system." He paused, then uttered the last part of his sentence with difficulty. "Moreover, to ensure the highest success rate and the lowest rejection rate, it must be stem cells from the biological father. 24 hours. Biological father." Every word was like a death knell. Time, at this moment, became the cruelest enemy. My daughter, my Poppy, her life was slipping away at breakneck speed, measured in seconds. And I could only watch helplessly, powerless to do anything. An overwhelming despair completely engulfed me. Just as I was on the verge of collapse, a familiar yet shrill voice rang out above me. "Beg me." Rose appeared at the ICU door without me noticing, looking down at me with a sickly, arrogant condescension on her face. "Beg me, and I'll let Ethan save your child." She believed Poppy's biological father was someone else. She believed that the only one who could save Poppy now was the Pei family, who possessed top-tier medical resources. She wanted me to kneel before her, begging for mercy, in my most desperate moment. I looked up, my bloodshot eyes burning with intense hatred, about to retort. "Get out of my way." With a roar, Ethan rushed over like a gust of wind and shoved his mother away violently. Rose stumbled a few steps, almost falling, and looked at her son in shock. "Ethan, are you crazy?" Ethan ignored her. He rushed to the nurse's station, took off his white coat, and lay down on an empty portable bed next to him. He roared at the terrified head nurse, "Draw my blood. Now. Immediately. Expedite all bone marrow matching procedures. I'll pay for it." He turned to me, his eyes bloodshot, each word seeming to be torn from his chest, his voice hoarse and desperate. "She's my daughter too. I'd give my life for her." With that, he pulled a folded document from his pocket and threw it at me with all his might. The document scattered and landed at my feet. The top line of text burned my eyes like a branding iron. Paternity test report. Ethan and Poppy, paternity probability greater than 99.99%. On the edge of life and death. In the most desperate moment. This secret I had hidden for 7 years, this truth I thought I would take to my grave, was completely revealed in the most intense, shocking, and heart-wrenching way. I looked at him, and he looked at me. The whole world seemed to consist only of the two of us, a silent standoff, and endless regret. The surgery was a great success. Ethan's bone marrow, like a life-saving rain, pulled Poppy back from the brink of death. But then, a new problem arose, an astronomical medical bill. Although Kevin had already paid all the expenses for me, Rose seized on this information gap and began her performance. She bribed the media to stage a tearful accusation outside the hospital, portraying me as a woman who would do anything for money, unable to even afford my daughter's life-saving treatment, implying that I was completely incapable of raising a child. Public opinion was in an uproar. Various jarring topics trended on social media. The entire internet was mocking me, saying that I ran away while pregnant, and now that I'm desperate, I still have to rely on my child's father to pay the bills. I became the pitiful yet hateful gold digger in everyone's eyes. I turned off my phone, too lazy to pay attention to the profanities, and focused on staying with Poppy in the hospital room. Just as the malice across the internet reached its peak, a global push notification for a financial news story instantly ignited the entire internet. Forbes' annual Art Person of the Year special issue features the mysterious illustrator whale on the cover, making her first public appearance. The woman in the photo, wearing a simple white shirt, holding a paintbrush, with a detached and indifferent gaze, is none other than me. Even more explosive was the headline, "Mysterious Artist Whale Donates $100 million to establish a private pediatric charity fund in the name of his daughter at St. Star Medical Group." The world fell silent instantly. All the comments mocking my inability to pay medical bills became the biggest joke of the year. I can't afford it? I bought out your entire forum for discussion. I saw Rose on the TV news, being interviewed. Her well-maintained face cracked inch by inch when she saw this news notification, her expression absolutely priceless. That slap, silent, resounded throughout the world. The day Poppy was discharged from the hospital, the entrance to St. Star Hospital was packed with media from all over the world. I didn't hide. With Kevin's arrangement, I held a grand press conference. I sat under the spotlight, dressed in a sharp black suit, my expression calm. I made no accusations, nor did I try to elicit sympathy. I simply recounted calmly everything that had happened 7 years ago. When Rose's fabricated bedroom photos and the humiliating recording were displayed on the big screen, the entire audience gasped. Everyone finally understood the truth of what happened 7 years ago. Finally, my gaze pierced through the countless flashing cameras, landing precisely on the pale-faced, swaying man in the audience. Ethan. To him, and to the whole world, I announced my final verdict, word by word. First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Ethan for his bone marrow donation. My foundation will pay all related medical expenses, nutritional expenses, lost wages, and all subsequent compensations into his account. Between us, we are even, except for our biological connection. I paused, then uttered the cruelest words. As for custody, I smiled slightly, but there was no warmth in that smile. My legal team will formally file a lawsuit in court. I will fight for sole and full custody of my daughter Poppy. And I will apply to the court to order that Mr. Ethan be prohibited from visiting my daughter in any form. My words were like the sharpest sword, severing the last thread of connection between him and me. Ethan, do you think that by donating bone marrow you can pretend nothing happened? Do you think that shedding a few tears and saying a few words of repentance can erase 7 years of harm? You're too naive. What I want is not your compensation. I want you to pay the price for your foolishness and arrogance. I want you to taste what it means to desire something you can't have, what it means to feel excruciating pain. My press conference was like an atomic bomb, detonating within the Pei family. Ethan's father, the true behind-the-scenes power holder of the St. Star Group, flew back from abroad overnight. He was a man even more authoritative and ruthless than Rose. He watched the entire recording of the press conference without uttering a word. The next day, the Pei family held a family meeting. No one knows what happened at the meeting. All that is known is that after the meeting, Rose had all her company shares, real estate, and financial rights revoked, leaving her with only a credit card with a limited limit. She was invited back to her old suburban house by 2 bodyguards, and was not allowed to step out the door without Tom's permission. This woman, who had lived a glamorous life, had her era ended on this day by her husband himself. After dealing with his wife, Tom personally visited me with generous gifts. Without saying much, this man who was a powerful figure in the business world bowed deeply to me, a junior who was even younger than his daughter. Alice, I'm sorry. It's my fault for not disciplining my family properly, causing you and the children so much suffering all these years. His lawyer then handed him a document, a 5% equity transfer agreement for Xingxing Medical Group. This is the Pei family's compensation to you. It's a small token of our appreciation, but please accept it." I didn't refuse. "This isn't compensation, it's what they owe me. It's what my daughter deserves." The Pei family has carried out an internal purge and severance in the most decisive way. They're trying to use this method to gain my forgiveness. But they didn't know that some damage, once inflicted, can never be repaired. I accepted the shares, but told my lawyer the same thing. The litigation continues. I won the case. The court ultimately awarded me full custody of Poppy. Ethan was deprived of visitation rights. From then on, it was as if he had disappeared from my world. I moved with Poppy, started a new life in a new environment. I thought that was truly the end for us. Until one day, Kevin handed me some information. "Take a look at this, your new neighbor." The information on the document was that of the owner of the luxury mansion across from mine. Owner's name, Ethan. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, picked up my binoculars, and looked across. Behind the window directly opposite mine, a familiar figure flashed by. So, he didn't disappear. He just changed his form of existence in my world, like a humble, unapproachable shadow. Later, I sent Poppy to kindergarten. Every day after school, I would see a person dressed in a heavy Pikachu costume handing out balloons to the children at the school gate. He never said a word, just silently handed them out. Every time Poppy passed by, he would slip her an extra, the prettiest one. Poppy liked him very much and called him Uncle Pikachu. Until one day, it was very hot, and Uncle Pikachu suffered heatstroke and fainted. The hood fell off, revealing a pale, haggard face drenched in sweat. It was Ethan. The surrounding parents were stunned. Who would have thought that the renowned Prince of St. Star would be dressed up as a mascot here? I looked at him, my heart filled with mixed emotions. The once high and mighty, arrogant prodigy was now reduced to dust. Was this stark contrast his way of atoning? And did I really need it? I took Ethan to the hospital. When he woke up and saw me sitting by his bedside, his eyes were filled with undisguised joy and anxiety. "Alice, you. The doctor said you just have mild heatstroke, nothing serious," I interrupted him, my tone calm. "Don't do such pointless things again. Poppy doesn't need a father in a mascot costume." My words were like a bucket of cold water, extinguishing the flame that had just ignited in his eyes. He lowered his head, like a child who had done something wrong, his voice filled with bitterness. "I just wanted to see her. I don't dare get close, I'm afraid you'll be angry." Looking at his dejected appearance, the hard ice in my heart seemed to soften slightly. That night, when I got home, I found Poppy holding my tablet, secretly sending voice messages. I quietly walked over and heard her voice. "Dad, you're so lame today, how could you faint? Mom was so worried about you. I'll tell you a secret, Mom looked at your college photos last night and cried. And another thing, her computer's login password is your birthday. If you don't step up your game soon, Uncle Kevin might get a permanent position. He even gave Mom a huge bouquet of roses today." I stood behind Poppy, both angry and amused. That little rascal. She's practically a little traitor. But at the same time, my heart was pounding because of her words. It turns out that what I thought was a pretense had already been seen through by this little guy. It turns out that what I thought was forgetting was nothing but self-deception. Shortly after, my first solo art exhibition opened grandly at the Art Museum in City A. The theme of the exhibition was Whale Fall. Whales fall into the sea, stars sink into puddles, the wind hides in the dense forest, and I hide in you. This is a portrait of my entire youth. The exhibition was an unprecedented success, attracting a huge influx of media and fans. Kevin, as the curator, stayed by my side, handling all sorts of people. Everything went smoothly until the unveiling of the final exhibit. According to the procedure, I was supposed to go on stage to give a speech and personally unveil the red cloth. But just as I was about to go on stage, the host announced an unexpected change. "Now, let's give a warm round of applause to our special guest for this art exhibition, who will reveal the final surprise." Under the spotlight, a tall figure in a black suit slowly walked onto the stage. It was Ethan. The entire audience erupted in an uproar. Kevin's face instantly darkened, and he tried to stop him, but I held him back. I wanted to see what he was up to. Ethan didn't look at anyone, his gaze remained fixed solely on me. He walked to the enormous exhibit covered by a red cloth and gave me a deep look. Then, he pulled the red cloth down. The red cloth slipped down. Behind it wasn't a painting, but a huge glass display case made up of countless small compartments. In each compartment, there was an inconspicuous old object. A sketch I carelessly tossed away. A worn-out 2B pencil. A photocopy of Poppy's first ultrasound report, the edges already yellowed. A faded baby onesie that Poppy wore. For 7 years, all the fragments I thought had been lost to time, all the moments he missed, all his endless regrets, he carefully preserved here, piece by piece. This is a monument of memories he built for me over 7 years. The entire exhibition hall fell silent. Everyone was stunned by the scene before them. Countless cameras were focused on me and Ethan on the stage. He stood before the display case of memories, holding the microphone, but remained silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was choked and hoarse. 7 years ago, I stood here and promised Alice that I would give her the world's grandest art exhibition. I broke my promise. I spent 7 years hating the person I loved most and hurting the person who gave me everything. I was foolish, arrogant, and unforgivable. He turned around and walked towards me, step by step. Finally, he stopped just a step away. This man, who had once been so arrogant and haughty, slowly knelt on one knee under the gaze of the whole world. He took a velvet box from his pocket and opened it. Inside wasn't a diamond ring the size of a pigeon's egg, but a simple ring woven from willow branches. It was exactly the same as the one he used to propose to me 7 years ago by the university lake. Alice, he looked up, his eyes brimming with tears, a vulnerable yet devout gaze I had never seen before. I spent 7 years hating the wrong person, breaking your heart. Now, I want to spend the rest of my 70 years making amends, loving you. Will belongs to the world, but Alice and Poppy are my whole world. Please, give me another chance. Marry me. The entire room was so quiet you could hear your own heartbeat. My tears, which I could no longer hold back, streamed down my face. In the instant I hesitated, a clear, tearful cry rang out from the crowd, "Mommy! Say yes. He'll be so pitiful." It was Poppy. Kevin was holding her, and she was crying even harder than I was. I looked at Ethan kneeling on the ground, at my daughter crying her eyes out, at the walls covered with our memories. The fortress in my heart, frozen for 7 years, crumbled in that moment. I reached out my hand and nodded, tears welling in my eyes. 1 year later. The French Riviera, in the south. Inside a white villa facing the sea. The afternoon sun is warm and languid. Ethan, wearing a ridiculous pink apron, is busy in the open kitchen. He was making Poppy's favorite pasta, carefully avoiding any seasonings that might contain peanuts. The once pampered young master who couldn't even fry an egg has now become a competent home cook. I sat at my easel on the terrace, painting the sea view before me, the sea breeze ruffling my long hair. Poppy, dressed in a pretty princess dress, was chasing and playing on the soft lawn with a golden retriever named Nian Gao, her clear laughter like silver bells. This is what tranquility truly means. Just then, Ethan's phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID, frowned slightly, but answered anyway and put it on speakerphone. A frail and humble voice came from the other end. "Ethan, can I talk to Poppy? It's Rose. For the past year, she's been forbidden from contacting us, only able to catch glimpses of our activities through the news." Ethan didn't answer immediately, but looked at me with a questioning gaze. I smiled at him and nodded slightly. He walked over and handed the phone to Poppy. "Poppy, it's Grandma." Poppy took the phone, looked at the elderly woman with gray hair and a weary expression on the screen, hesitated for a moment, but still sweetly called out, "Grandma." On the other end of the phone, I heard suppressed sobs of joy. Ethan came over, gently hugged me from behind, rested his chin on my shoulder, and we looked together at our daughter playing in the distance. He whispered in my ear, in a voice only the two of us could hear, "My love, though late, has finally arrived." I turned my head, met his tender gaze, and kissed his lips. As the sun set, our shadows stretched long. The sea breeze carried the scent of happiness,